record this. Yeah, so let me do that again. So I'm just going to introduce Christina Ryan, who works at Industrial Light and Magic here in Australia in Sydney. And she is a world-class texturing artist, and I believe you're a lead now, which is amazing. Christina and I actually used to work together many, many years ago, and so we have a long history, and she's always willing to help out the next generation of students and young people coming into or on their journey. So we're always grateful when Christina comes on board. And for today, she's going to go through and I think deconstruct your golf bag. Is that right, Chrissy?
Yeah, I
So
think that
for those
sounds
people
right.
that don't know, the golf bag, we actually had 11 artists commissioned to do the golf bag, and Christina was one of them. And she's going to just actually go through and show how easy it is. And I think you're using Substance Painter. And yeah, maybe you can talk a little bit about your process and how where you UV'd and where you were look deving and the texturing application that you used in between and stuff as well. Um, I'm just going to share. Are you good to set up, Chrissy? Otherwise, I can just share the contest page for a second.
Yeah, I mean, I've got everything open. I'm all set up. You just let me know when you want me to take the reins.
All right, cool. So I'm just going to share my screen for a sec. And then, yeah, for those people that don't know, so this is the contest. Like I said, there's a whole bunch of sort of amazing prizes being flown out to a tournament, and all expenses paid to the actual golfing manufacturer producing a real life golf bag with your design on it. And there's a lot of really cool things. Even if you don't play golf, like I'm not a big golfer at all, but it's just like I say, it's like if I was texturing for a game or for a film, sometimes you're given these types of assets where you have to texture them anyway. So it's a really good showpiece and a great piece to add to your portfolio. And you've also got the opportunity to win some of these amazing prizes. And you can see here there's two categories. Like I said, Andrew went into more detail about this morning. Today we're just going to crack on and get into the texturing side of things with Christina. So I'm going to pass over the controls to you, Christina, and yeah, maybe you can do a bit of a talk about yourself and what projects you've worked on and so forth.
Yeah,
And I was
sure.
just going to say one last thing. If anyone has any questions for Christina, then just pop them in the chat, and I'll pick them up at the end, and we can ask her once we've finished the walkthrough.
Amazing. Thank you, Alan. So just so I get an understanding, everyone in the audience today, a lot of people are considering texturing their own golf bag. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Amazing.
Hope
All
so.
right. So, guys, you're in for a bit of a treat. It was honestly such a really fun project to be involved in. As you can see, actually, let me just share my screen and then we can talk to. I'm going to send you a request, Alan, to let me share my screen. Did you get a request, Alan? You might just need to approve it.
You should have it. You should be good to go, no?
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
All right, one moment. I'm going to share my entire screen. Yeah. All right, we all can see this? Great.
We can see it. Yep, we're all good.
Yep, awesome. So, guys, my name's Christina, as Alan already said. I'm a lead texture artist at Industrial Light and Magic here in Sydney. So, I've been there now for about 4 years, and prior to that, I worked at Rising Sun Pictures with Alwyn in Adelaide. So, I mean, I've been in visual effects as a texture artist for quite a while now. It's hard to believe it's what, 8 to 10 years or something ridiculous. I've had, it's been a crazy journey, but I've loved every minute of it. And it's just really awesome to be able to create cool things every day. So when I got the opportunity to be able to texture like the golf bag on my own, I knew I just had to give it a go. I always see the rookies do these amazing competitions. We have the meet mat competition, we had the combi van competition. We've had so many opportunities to be able to witness you guys creating such amazing pieces of artwork. And it's always been such a pleasure to see everyone's own individual take on such an asset. But I suppose I've never really been involved in creating the asset myself. So I thought it'd be super fun to get involved. Um, I had my work cut out for me because you guys always manage to just create the most amazing things. And so I drew a lot of inspiration from, all the crazy different things that, the Rookies crew would come up with in the past. Um, so with my golf bag, the possibilities were really endless with what I could do. For me, I wanted it to be, I wanted to take it into a bit of a creative realm, but I still wanted to ground it in a little bit of reality. I wanted it to be a golf bag that, could exist in the real world. I didn't want to take it into complete impossible. So in terms of inspiration, you guys can see the final product here. But I suppose what I plan to do today is just walk backwards and just show you guys how I got here from essentially just a blank canvas. So whenever I'm doing something like this, I really just need to look around and come up with lots of different ideas. Um, it's really easy to get quite overwhelmed when you're not sure where to start. So I kept ideas pretty broad to begin with, and I started looking on the Live Golf website, and I just thought I would look for sources of inspiration there. So I had a look at all the different events. I really just researched a lot about the event, what they were about, what they did, and inspiration actually came to me pretty quickly. So on the website, and I'm just going to open up my PureF document, and this is kind of like my mood board. On the website, the original launch for this bag was going to be at the Korea event. And on that event description, there was this really cool little description about the event and how they were going to have what you call like neon lit ranges. And apparently, it's a bit of a culture to be able to play golf at nighttime. They have these amazing like ranges that are all really nicely lit. And yeah, so I really enjoyed that theme when I saw it. And I just had some ideas start to come into my mind. So I looked into it a little bit more and also just into general, like the Korean sort of culture as well, just kind of getting a bit of an inspiration and a mood board. And this is sort of the first image I came across, that pink and blue, cybery neon lit environment. And then as I sort of just kept diving down this theme, and this is before I'm even touching anything in 3D, by the way, this is just like days and days of research. Um, I kind of like just let the theme evolve. So over time, I felt that the theme somewhat evolved a little bit into more of a futuristic, like a cyberpunk theme. And I thought it was really, really cool. And I mean, I've never really seen a cyberpunk golf bag before. So, you know what? I decided to stick with it. And I thought it would be something that would be really fun and really rewarding to achieve. And I felt that, yeah, like looking at all of these designs, there were so many different ways I could go down. And yeah, so this is what I decided this is the direction I went down. So here I've got a little bit more like these are Nest neon lights and a little bit more cyberpunk. So I loved just seeing some of the like this is like all different black material. But you can see that it's just so interesting. There's like belts, there's buckles, there's zips, there's little lights. There's little like futuristic sort of elements with like LED lights and head-up displays and things like that. So I knew that I definitely wanted to incorporate all of these into the bag. And yeah, like I just thought it was awesome. So what else have we got? So even like these ones here, I really liked these ones because they also had the neon light element that I was after. So this one was a big inspiration. I loved the contrast in colors, the blue and the orange. I also really did like the pink and the blue, but I wanted to make it feel mature. I didn't want it to feel like childish or anything. I really wanted it to feel really cool. So that's why I kind of gathered a lot of these references, and even just having a look at the general design language is what I sort of kept an eye on as well. And what I could see was that there was a lot of these sort of sharp, angular shapes, and it's not everywhere. It's kind of just scattered throughout. I noticed that, a lot of these bags, they weren't really overdone in terms of the lights. It was just very simply placed in a few key areas. And where it gets a little bit too busy, that's not the direction I really wanted to go for. I wanted to keep it quite subtle and quite well designed. So keeping all of this in mind, I kind of just kept together this moon board. I also went onto Firefly and I just drew myself up some really quick generative concept arts just to kind of help me see it because I suppose with me, I like to be able to see as a visual effects artist, we quite often are given reference to follow. It's not often that we do get to just come up with designs out of our brains. So it was really, really helpful for me just to be able to pop these into Firefly. And I recommend you give it a go. It's nowhere near the final product, but it just helps you visualize what it is you're trying to achieve, and it might give you a little bit of direction. I don't really know what it was trying to do here. I think it's a mixture between like a trolley or a pram. I think it might have struggled to kit bash together a golf bag and something cyberpunk, but you know what? It gave me some creative energy to draw upon. So a couple key elements here were I noticed this, I can see this material here. It's like this puffy, looks like a puffer jacket material. Not quite, but I really liked that element. I also really loved here. It kind of looked like we had a bit of glass. And again, you have to kind of use your imagination to interpret what you're seeing here. That's what I like about it because I was able to take the direction myself using this as just like a base, but it just helped me, come up with some ideas. So this one I could see there was a bit of like a metallic element going on, I think. But I thought that was really cool, like an insulation sort of material. Um, it also felt that maybe there was some sort of depth to some of these pockets. So you could see some of them had like a, maybe not glass, but like a see-through element with some bits and bobs inside. So you can see here, it kind of looks like you've got like a see-through box and you've got something on the inside. So yeah, this is where I started with all of this. And most importantly, whenever you're creating something realistic, you really do need to get examples of those real life materials to be able to have some like inspiration or something to copy. Um, you never really want to just copy things out of your head if you're going for realism because sometimes you can just come up with details and invent details where they don't exist. So this is where I just started to download various different bags, even just puffer jackets. This is that material I mentioned before, just to get a bit of an idea of how it feels, what sort of stitching and elements we would need to see, how does the zipper resolve and things like that. So I always have things like this next to me as well. So you can see this here is similar sort of vibe, but it's a bit more shinier, more of a vinyl. Some pencil cases or makeup bags with a similar sort of feel. Um, so yeah, this is what I had. And then I also just had some examples of some just basic golf bags as well, just so I could really understand the design language of the golf bag itself. Because at the end of the day, this golf bag has to be functional. It has to work as a golf bag. I can't, I wanted to be able to create something that could exist in the real world. So I wanted to make sure that anything I added made sense for the storytelling of the golf bag. Yeah, so that's where I'm at in terms of reference. Now, in terms of questions and things like that, Alan, I'm not sure whether we want to pause here and there and ask questions or whether we want to leave them to the end.
Yeah, we can leave them to the end. I think I'm just posting links in the chat. If everything like Pure Ref and Firefly for those people that don't know, maybe if you wanted to throw some questions in the chat and we can talk more about it at the end of it. But no, I think just keep going with where you're at, Chrissy. Just keep going through the process. It's great.
Amazing. Cool. All right. Keep forging on. So in terms of next steps, what we essentially wanted to do is get this into Substance Painter. I've always loved Substance Painter. I think it's a really great program to be able to quickly create concepts like this. And you can really visually see what you're doing as you're painting. So I'm just going to take you guys into Substance Painter. And so this is what I've got. So just keep in mind what you're seeing in Substance Painter is not going to 100% match the final render. There is a little bit of look dev involved and some other techniques in compositing to kind of help it get that last, you know, 10 to 15% of the way. This is true for most pieces of artwork. There's always that extra post-processing step. But you know, you can get a pretty close representation of what you're seeing. And that's what I love about it so much is that whilst you're painting, you can see that 3D output live. So I thought what I could do is I could strip back all of the layers. I could just talk about my process and uh, you know, bits I got stuck on, what parts I enjoyed, how I did certain parts, and also just yeah, some like general process and things like that. I could also spend a minute on just preparing the mesh for this
Yeah,
competition as well.
I think that would be
So,
good, Chrissy.
Owen, I assume that these guys will already have the UV'd model and
Yeah,
everything
they've
ready
already
to
got the
go.
UV one, so yeah,
Beautiful.
it'd be good just to even kind of strip it back, maybe go through the baking process and just, talk about the setup. Maybe I don't know if you've got
Mm,
IDs for that and just, maybe just walk through that a little bit. And
yep.
you know what? I think it would even be good just to even just, throw some of the materials from the shelf on there.
Mm.
And and then you can come back to this and talk about your techniques. Maybe even I don't know if you've got an Illustrator file or an image that you can just drag and drop on there as well. Like I can show that if you need to if
Mm.
as well.
I
But
can make something up. I'll make it work.
yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, just strip it all the way back. I think I mean yours is quite sophisticated. I think for today it would be great just to even grab some of those materials on the shelf, just
Yeah.
show the tiling, different maybe the different projection and just, real
Yeah.
basic sort of stuff.
For sure. Well, the good thing is, Alwyn, that this project actually wasn't too complicated. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of elements, and there's definitely a few little advanced tips and tricks that I've incorporated in this file. And the main reason I've done these is mostly for optimization purposes. But in terms of the actual process, it's not too dissimilar from a pretty standard workflow.
Hmm.
And that's another thing I love about Substance is that it's really user friendly, but you can also take it right up to professional level. So I'll walk through where I got some of these materials, and I promise it's not too difficult at all. A lot of them are really simple. So what I actually used for this process was actually Substance 3D Source. I use this all the time, guys. It's so helpful. You can use it as a starting point for your materials. You could use it as a bit of inspiration. But I highly recommend hopping on. Um, I believe it's a part of the 3D collection. But this is me searching sci-fi metal, and you can see there's already so many different materials and options here. So a couple of the materials I did use are just from here, and I've just topped them up. My favorite one that I used was the insulation. When you called this one out,
Yeah.
insulation material.
I just to interrupt there for a sec, Chris, I
Yeah.
was just going to say, yeah, because the 3D asset library, depending on what sort of licensing you've got right now, but as you can see up the top there, you've got that free assets on the left-hand column there, Chrissy,
Yep.
right up the top. So there's a whole bunch there that you can grab. The other place that you
Free.
can go to is the community library, and this is all completely free. And I just posted it in the chat there as well. These are posted by community members. You don't need an Adobe ID or anything like that. You can just use a normal email address and log on there. And there's a whole bunch of really good materials there that is as a starting point you could use as well.
Amazing. And the thing is, a lot of these materials are quite simple. So if you don't have access to them, you can still create these amazing materials from scratch. There's a lot that comes with it for free, and that's a part of the design process. There's just so much that you can do. So I kind of drew inspiration from some of these ones. I loved this puffy like insulation one here, but there's also just plain ones as well. So I'm just going to walk through the different kinds of stuff. So basically, I like to organize everything inside of folders. So if I just tick on the quilted fabric, and this is that metal that you saw.
Sorry, Chris.
Um,
Do you want to just
so
change?
all it is,
Do you want to
what's
change the
that?
light? Do you want to change the lighting back just to neutral, and then we can,
Yeah,
yeah,
good idea.
just to cool.
Let's put this one on.
I may
I think
even
that'll
just do a
do.
studio one so it's completely neutral, maybe.
Yeah, we can do that.
I use the Tobacco. Yeah, that
Yeah,
one
that's
there. That
fine.
one's usually pretty cool.
Okay, all right. So with this one, it's just a metallic material. And so this is the insulation foil here. Now we don't have to go into all of these extra little bits and bobs. A lot of this is actually just hand painting things to get it looking perfect. But in terms of insulation foil, it really just is a drop and drag scenario. So insulation foil, let me just actually tick off all of these things and you can kind of see bit by bit what's happening. So insulation foil. So you can see it's actually within my library. If you do have access to Substance 3D assets, you can download them straight into your asset manager. You don't actually have to download them off the net. So this is all I did actually was that I found lots of different ones that I liked. I added them to my library and then one by one, I just dropped and dragged them on to kind of get a bit of a feel to see what I liked. If we can get this sort of happening now, we can just go like metal. I don't know, this one here, decorative metal panels. So if I just get this one, should be able to download it. Should just be able to drop and drag it in, shouldn't I? Not like this. Download.
It'll just
Oh,
download onto your shelf, Chrissy. If you go back to your
oh,
assets,
okay.
it
It
should
goes
be
to your
there.
assets,
The
doesn't it? Oh,
highlight. There
there we
it
go.
goes.
Here we go, decorative. So
Yeah,
you
cool.
can see I was able to sort of just download it and then use it straight away. So this allowed me to very quickly just find different pieces that I liked. I'll just drop and drag them. You can come in and look at the properties down the bottom. You can change all the colors to see if there's something that you like. And I was able to just very quickly populate all the different areas with different materials. I knew I wanted some leather. If we had a look at the reference, I knew I wanted some sort of leather. I wanted some sort of softer fabric element as well. I didn't want it all like that shiny vinyl. So I got some fabric. I loved these metallic elements, which is why I knew I wanted to incorporate something like this. So that's where I sort of started. I just downloaded a couple different leathers, a couple different metals, just dropped and dragged them and just played around. And what I recommend you guys do is you actually just go ahead and paint some very basic masks to begin with. So in terms of masks, this is just a black and white area that shows or hides a particular material. If you set up some groups with some masks early on into just some different areas, what you can do is you can just drop and drag the different materials underneath those masks. So you're not having to repaint the same area over and over again. So block out the bag into some different regions just to start with. Maybe you might like to separate out the straps. You might want to separate them out from some different parts here. Maybe get two or three different materials happening and just start dropping and dragging some stuff in. A blank canvas is always really, really daunting to work with. So that's where I started. So what I would do is I'll drop in the insulation foil and do that. And then next I've got some fabric. So I'm just going to switch on the fabric. So that's this one here. And again, I went through a lot of different fabrics until I settled on this one. Now, zippers, this is just some different types of zippers. Again, this is a fabric nylon that I've downloaded. So switch that one on. So this is like this part here. It's a pretty simple stitch. Um, these are some straps. And what I'm doing now is I'm actually just ticking off all of the extra layers and I'm just stripping it right back down to the base material. That's why you can just see the clean looking bag and how it looks. And then all of the other stuff is just the nice to have stuff on top later. So I really recommend you start with something like this, just super, super basic. Um,
For your zippers, Chrissy, did you just use one of the brushes there, the zip brush, or what did you do?
mm, the zippers is one of my favorite things. I'll go through that one.
Yeah, nice.
The path tool. Oh my
Yeah.
God, I love it. So the buckles and handles, I'm just switching these guys on. So this is just like a dark anodized metal. I went through so many different phases of that metal. I settled on something quite dark. Plastic. And then we have the lights. Okay, I think I've got everything switched on now. Zipper. Ah, the leather, forgot that one. All right, so now we have all of this on. Now that quilted fabric had a lot of different complexities in it, but as you can see, most of these layers are actually quite simple. All right, so now it doesn't really look like the final quality yet, but you can kind of see that this is just the basic different elements of the kinds of things that I wanted to include. So you can see again, this is the final product and this is what we start with. So to be honest, it doesn't look too flash yet. So I show this because it's just a bit of encouragement to say if things don't look good straight off the bat, that's okay. Quite often things don't look that great when you just start with this sort of stuff, and that's where all the beautiful little details that you start adding on top really just build up to that final product. Again, I went through so many iterations of this bag because, just chopping and changing things all the time. So whatever you decide on at the start doesn't have to be what you end with. So I thought, when I'm a little bit stumped like this and I'm not really sure, like these materials look good, but there's definitely some things missing here. It just doesn't feel right. It's missing details. And not to mention at this stage, I should probably also switch off I'm just going to switch off this part here as well, actually, just to take away some of the other details. So this is kind of what we're looking at now. And so when I'm stuck like this, I kind of just work towards details that I know need to be there, that are really easy to do, easy to achieve, and hopefully it will just help me, on my way to the finish line. So the things that I knew that I wanted to add on this are, well, lots of zippers and things like that. I could see that part of these like designs, there was zippers everywhere. There was also, yeah, like LED lights, but just all of these like stitching and things like that. So these are all just like little details that you can just add and get a bit of an easy win when you are a little bit stuck. So I'm just going to go through some of that process and what I did here. So actually, I will go through the zippers because these were super fun. So let's have a look. Zippers, actually, no, these are in the details. Now they're all on different layers. Stitch, stitch, stitch. Don't mind me, guys. I'm just getting it all set up. Actually, what I'll do first is I'll go through some of these stitches and I'll do the zippers afterwards because I've just got these open now. The stitches, for anything with fabric, stitches really bring these sorts of things to life. You can't really have fabric without some stitches and a bit of folds and like details like this. So in terms of like some of these like little stitches, I'm just going to switch them one by one. So here we go. So these are just some of the little details that I really think just helped sell it. And how you do this with a single stitch, I use what you call the path tool. Now, this tool is a crowd favorite. A lot of people absolutely love it. Get it up because you can actually like move these points at any given time. So if you don't like where they are, you can just come back and reposition them. So for any detail that you're just, you're kind of contemplating or you don't really know the positioning of them and you want to get them quite nice and neat, highly recommend this path tool for that reason. Um, so, I mean, this isn't a substance tutorial, but there's a lot of stitches. I started off very neat with my naming, and you can tell I gave up a little bit towards the
Wow,
end.
that is, I've never seen that many. That's crazy.
But I think I really pushed this to the limits, Alan.
Yeah, that's cool. Maybe
But
just do
it's
an
been
empty
good.
layer and just show the people the path tool and just yeah, just do up a
Yeah,
quick line.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I can just add a new path here.
Yeah,
All we do is you just draw around like this. And it's if you've used Photoshop before, um, it'll feel quite familiar. But it really just is as simple as that. And then I've drawn it on. So each path is represented by a different like path here. And as you can see, you can really push it quite far with lots of them. I recommend naming them, but just do your best with it.
and
And
was
then,
that the top stitch brush, Chrissy? So you grab
yeah,
the path tool on the side nav bar there with the little
yeah,
pen
this one
icon,
here.
and then the brush that you grabbed was the top stitch. Is that right?
Let me have a look.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
there's lots of different brushes that you can use, but whenever you click on one of these, you can actually open up the properties tab.
yeah.
So you can see, like, you just come into here, properties, paint, and you can change the various different parameters. So I've used stitches straight.
Yeah.
It's a material. And then here you can actually change the type of stitch. So you can, running double. So now you've got a double stitch.
Yeah. Cool.
You got, yeah, all kinds of options. So I really enjoyed this one just for the fact that it's already there.
Yeah.
So you go into the properties, you just click on, it will say material, like it'll be an empty slot essentially. And then you can just browse the library for all different things. Um, I believe you can even download some of these things off of Substance Source, or you can make your own if you want to.
Mhm.
If you feel like being clever and you're savvy with Substance Designer, you can actually make your own. The options are actually endless with this, but for me, I was keeping it quite simple with just elements I could already find.
Yeah.
But you can come in here, change the color of it and everything on the fly at any point. So, now we have some pink stitches going on.
I was just going to
So,
say one thing there too, because sometimes that blue, yeah, so yeah, sometimes that blue line really frustrates me because I just want to see the stitch. So there's a little,
mm,
when you're in that, if you go back into your path tool, or if you click on your layer, the path one, Chrissy, up the side, and when you click on it, right, if you're on the top one or whichever one it was there, that one,
this one.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then you click on that and see how it's green. So you got that little icon just directly above the path there with the eye, and you can
Yeah.
turn that off and on, and that'll just basically hide it. I have a shortcut for that, which yeah, see
Ah,
there, yeah. So
there we go.
I have a little shortcut that just ticks that off and on, so I can actually see it rather than having to click off my layer, which really frustrates me. But that's just a little tip that I have.
Thank you. That's really good. I didn't know that.
There you go.
Oh my God, that's so much nicer, isn't it?
Yeah,
There we go. Learning things every day.
that's it.
Um, so essentially with this, it was a bit of brute force, to be honest, going through some of these details. I think you can definitely do some of this procedurally, but the idea of this, I mean, it was a creative exercise and a lot of the artists were doing a lot of hand painted elements. So I didn't really see an issue with going around and doing a bit of hand painting on this. So I just kind of went through and added a lot of different levels of stitching. We've got stitching around, the puffer jacket elements, double stitching. There's a lot of different stitching. But honestly, it really just helped bring it to
Quick
life.
question in regards to the puffer stuff there. So was there,
Mm,
because in your render it looks like it, yeah, it is puffy, right? Was that happening in the
yep.
placement?
Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah.
is. So I'll just quickly run through that.
Mm.
Let me just delete this pink stitch. So,
And just actually before we move off of stitching,
mm,
is the because I don't know this, but is the bag symmetrical? Like, because if you're doing stitching and you put on your symmetry, then it'll save you half the time of like doing all the stitching, right? It's
It
not
was not symmetrical.
okay. So one that is kind of annoying, but you
Yeah.
can actually move that symmetry line as well. I don't know if you knew that.
Mm.
So you can actually adjust the symmetry line so that you can, if it's off center, you can actually adjust it so that it kind of centers squares up. But sometimes it doesn't always work.
Yeah, so I believe, I mean, look, with this golf bag, nothing in real life is symmetrical. So I think
Yeah,
the modeler did the right thing in creating it asymmetrical. Otherwise, it would have looked a little bit odd.
yeah,
But you are right. Generally speaking, it is really nice if an asset is symmetrical because you can just do that double-sided workflow that you were talking about.
hmm,
That's how I probably would have liked to have done it. But again, it didn't really bother me too much. I just did. To be honest, it added a nice bit of variation between the two sides. Nothing was perfectly even.
yeah, nice.
And it's kind of a mindless activity,
Yeah,
adding stitches. And you guys might not want to add as much stitches as me. Yeah, that's what I did.
no, I love it.
Sorry, guys. So in terms of like, I'd love to talk about that metal material because, you can see it's definitely quite boring,
Hmm.
at the moment. So there's not really much going on. And this is where sort of the more challenging, maybe some more advanced knowledge comes in. But at the end of the day, if you know your basics, it's just building upon some of those basic elements, as to how you might achieve some of these things. And it's about the ability to be able to break down what you see, in a reference image to know what you need to create to recreate it. I couldn't find exactly what I wanted on Substance Source, so I was able to get a bit of a base and then just keep layering on top from there. So just based on general VFX knowledge and industry experience, fabric, the actual textures and materials of fabric is actually a really, really simple recipe. You don't need a lot of information to make them look good. But what is really important is a lot of the folds, a lot of the crinkles, and the actual model itself is so important for the look. Because, I mean, you can tell whether something looks like denim or cotton or like a puffer jacket like this, purely like if you were to look at this grey scale, you'd probably have a pretty good guess about what type of fabric it is based on the types of wrinkles that you're seeing. So I knew it was really important that if I wanted to achieve an effect like this, that I got something really close to what we're seeing here. And you can see that with this sort of jacket element, you've got these vertical soft stitching, sorry, folds, and then it gets tighter towards the stitching element. So I had to basically figure out a way to recreate that. Now, without going in and hand painting these or sculpting these, I needed to come up with something procedural. So I did come up with something procedural that somewhat matched the look, and then I just went over it with a little bit of hand painting just to finish it off. So I'll just walk through that. So I like to keep everything again organized. So this quilted fabric, I called it quilted because I think that's just what came to mind at the time, but it's just whatever this quilted element fabric here is. So if I'm going to go into it bit by bit, um, so what we're seeing here, lines. So this one was actually quite simple. The way I kind of figured out the effect was that you have to create a black and white mask to either hide or reveal the particular effect that you want. Now, all I wanted was a bit of height. So let's forget the folds to start with. The first thing I needed to create was just that vertical or horizontal undulations. And all I did was essentially just create like a fill layer with those gradients. And these gradients, if you right click and add a fill layer, and then I added a this one here. So the gradient linear too, it really just is a bunch of lines. You can adjust the tiling, you can adjust the balance of it, but it really just was these horizontal lines that I was after with evenly spaced. And this is where some of the UVs were important as well. So I just had to make sure that the UVs were all in the right direction. If you do find that the UVs don't work for you, or if you want something to work in a slightly different direction, you can just mask it off and adjust the scale a little bit. In fact, that's actually what I've done here. I've got the reason why it looks a little bit messy and there's multiple layers here is just because the lines on the back didn't really work like the rest of it. I needed to offset the tiling a little bit just to make it work for the UVs. So you can do that if you need to. Um, so the lines here, we add a little bit of blur and just a very, very slight warp. You can barely see it, but you'll see it in the 3D view what it actually does. So if I now switch this on, you can see it starts off kind of basic. We just have that soft undulation happening, the ups and the downs. A little bit of a blur just to soften it out, and a very tiny bit of warp. Now, you probably didn't see too much there, but every single little bit of information really does just help sell that sense of realism. Nothing is perfect. So just adding a little bit of warp here and there does help, does do wonders. So in terms of where I go from here, the next sort of step is those folds and the creases. So I'm just going to go ahead and actually switch on the rest of these things. These are just little bits and bobs to actually adjust the information. You can see something that I had a little bit of trouble was this part here. You can see that as it's expanding, I'm ending up with quite a few artifacts just because it's penetrating the mesh. So all these layers are really doing, I'm just kind of by hand removing some of that height along the edges just to give it a softer feel. See that? So you may find that you need to come in and just fix little things by hand. Not everything's perfectly neat when you do it. But for stuff like this, I actually recommend leaving this kind of thing to the end. Don't waste your time at the start perfecting all of your different informations and your different materials, because the amount of times I chopped and changed this material is crazy. So always keep the fine tuning and the tech checks, to the end. Any hand painting stuff, don't do that at the start. So in terms of creasing and things like that, I'm just going to switch that on. So this was just a little bit of a basic warble. Again, more, you can see that it's kind of added a really nice effect. And how I've done it is actually, there's so many different ways that you can actually achieve different effects. There's no right way or wrong way. So what I've actually done is I've created a new layer and I've added just a height channel, and I've just put in this fill layer here, and you can find this in the shelf. It's just like a fold. I think I just typed fold inside of the shelf. You can adjust the balance of it. You can adjust so many different parts. You can adjust the tiling. You can adjust stuff like this. And I just made sure that the offset and the undulations, I just made sure I matched the tiling amount to the tiling amount of the lines that I had previously. So that's how I was able to actually get it to match. I just made sure I tiled this one by 6 and I tiled the other one by a multiplier of 6 just to make sure it lined up. And all this is doing is this is just knocking it out in some areas. So my general process is you create an effect, you put it on everything, and then you just rub it off in some areas because you won't have the same effect in every single little area. And again, this was just like a finer level of information. So, big creases and little creases. And to be honest, it actually came together quite easily. I found that's all you really needed to be able to create that look. Having a look across here now, you can see we do have those big undulations and then we just have those small ones as well. And once you add the stitches and things on top of it, I found it came together quite readily. There was definitely a little bit of hand painting, like areas. This is that fine tuning I was telling you about. So I would come in and go, okay, maybe around here, like where it touches the parachute. It didn't really feel like it was sitting on it nicely. So, I'd come in and just paint a little bit of hand painted stuff on there. So this is just that last 10%, do you know what I mean? To make it look nice. So that's how I did the parachute fabric. And I just added a little bit of color shifts on it as well, just to emulate some of that iridescence that you see in a lot of these images. I wasn't going for like physical stuff. I just wanted some color on there to make it look pretty. So that's how I did that one. In terms of all of the other things, I think the other fabrics are actually all pretty simple. There's nothing really interesting about them other than just finding ones that I liked and nice combinations. So I'm not going to bother going through a lot of all of these other ones because, again, like if I have a look at the straps, it's just a plain nylon like this. And in terms of like wear and tear and details, a lot of them just have a very small amount of wear and tear on them. I didn't go too crazy with it because I wanted it to be futuristic and quite clean. So I just kept, so this is just some little dots on there. And then this is actually a bit of edging, like a different color on the edges just to simulate a bit of like fraying on the outside. But other than that, you can see it's quite simple. Maybe on the metal, I did a couple fingerprints and things like that. But again, nothing too crazy. You can see I've got some smudges. So the way I would do this is I would add the detail that I would like to see. I would like some roughness. So, it's actually a really shiny metal. I made it super rough. And then I right click, add a black mask, and then right click, add fill layer. And then honestly, you can just browse through the many different amazing procedurals that you have on here. I wasn't too fussy with this. It was just about giving a little bit of information. I definitely wouldn't stew over a lot of these details too much. I think the biggest thing for these sorts of competitions, in my opinion, is like just the overall design as well from a distance is really important. It's
Yeah.
nice to have some of these little details, like the hand painted stuff, really close. But, again, I'm just trying to sell my story, so I didn't spend too long on this. And yeah, nothing else. Oh, and this is actually one of my me saying that just fine details aren't necessary. But look, I think this is a really nice little detail. Is whenever you do like metal bolts and things like this, it's always nice just that little bit of extra detail.
Yeah,
See,
of
like
course.
it just adds a little sense of realism to it.
Yeah.
So gives it. And these are really easy to add as well. They're just little cylinders. So
And in terms of
yeah,
the
that's
the fluorescent piping and stuff, are you using emissive there, or how did you set that up?
yeah. So in terms of the emission, let me go through that. Again, this is actually super simple. It's just a plain fabric. Oh, actually, just a plain fill layer. Now, to actually visualize emission, you do just have to make sure that you have emission enabled. So just within the
Texture
shader
set.
settings.
Yeah.
Actually, I believe emission is on there by default, but I also did just add the alpha blending just so I could see the opacity. But you do just have to make sure you have emission as a channel. So in texture set settings, you can add a channel,
Yeah.
and these are all the other. I've actually already got a lot of them on here
Yeah, you
already.
got a lot
That's why
on.
you know. Yeah. Sorry. But emissive is just one of those. So yeah, it's not often you get an object that's like it's got opacity, emission,
Mm.
metallic, all of those different effects. So I just went ahead and added all of them. And so the emission here. And then so what you do then is once that's enabled, you can just create a new fill layer. You just come down now and switch on emission. So you're no longer really working with color, you're working with this different kind of channel which emits light. So you can come and create like I don't know, let's go green for something different. And you can see the effect is like doesn't look too great right now, but it's essentially emitting light. So you would just right click, add a black mask, right click, add paint, and then you can just go in and just draw where you want these different effects. So actually, when I was designing this bag at the very start, I went through a lot of iterations of where to put these LED lights. Originally, I actually had a lot of designs all over the bag, but it ended up being quite complicated, and I just felt it took it away from being quite elegant, and it made it look a little bit I don't really can't find my words, but it just to me it just didn't feel stylized and cool. It just felt overdone. But initially, the kinds of things that I would do for this, I would just from a distance draw some different like details on it, right? I started with like, and things like this from a distance. I would try like little circuit board patterns or different shapes, and I would just play around with the curves of it. And again, I've got my mouse here instead of my drawing tablet, so you're not getting much. But it's not about perfection, but it was just about like overall design from a distance and, how this might look. So I would come in and I would actually, it's almost like a bit of a paint over in a way. I'd come in and just draw a lot of these different lines. And I had so many different, actually, look, I've got it here, pattern experiment. Let's see. Here we go. We've got it. You guys behind the scenes, you. So this is the kind of stuff that I was playing around with and experimenting, right? In the end, I switched these guys off, but it's cool to kind of see. And you can see here, like it's not perfect. I've really just come in and just painted it, just to see whether I liked it
Yeah.
or not.
Mm.
What's that, sorry?
Somebody just asked what they were in terms, what's the process when deciding you need to add another channel like Emission, for example, in the middle of the process? Because I
Mm,
assume you'll need to readjust the mask, blend layers and stuff.
yeah. So, in terms of like, I think there's a couple different aspects to that question. The first part is how do you know whether or not you need to add it? Well, the thing is, when I've come over to this setting here and I've actually added it to the shader, this doesn't necessarily mean that I have to use it.
Mm.
All I'm essentially doing is just enabling or disabling the ability to be able to use it in the shader if I want to. It's just really in terms of optimization, you tend not to add things if you don't think you're going to use them. It's better to have a stripped back version of the shader. For me, I knew I wanted Emission because it was a neon lit bag. So anything that produces lights, I knew I needed a shader that was able to emit light essentially. So once I switched this on, this doesn't mean I actually have Emission yet on my bag. You can see that I can have this enabled, but I haven't yet utilized
Yeah,
that
that
channel.
channel. Mm.
But then once I've got that channel enabled, I can then do what I need with it. So what I would do is I would create like a layer like this experiment layer. You can go add fill, and just like what I did before, you can switch on the emission here. So this is not like, this is different to switching it on in the shader. This just means I want a material that has emission now. Like I'm just creating a new layer. And this layer, I want it to be emission. So you can switch it on and you can change the color. You can do whatever you like with it. That's the beauty of working with masks, if you're familiar with masks. And that's why I said before, you add a black mask to switch it on, to switch it off, sorry. And then you can add paint. And all I'm essentially doing now is painting a black and white mask that hides or shows that particular layer. And the aspect or what it is essentially non-destructive. So if I decide later down the track I don't want that, I can actually just switch it off. And the way I worked was that I would actually create things on different layers. So the pattern experiment, this was only one of the experiments I had. I probably had about 10 different ones of these as I was working. And I would actually just leave them there. And if I didn't want them temporarily, I would just hide them with this little eye because I don't need to delete them. I can just take them off temporarily. And then I would come in and I'd switch it back on and, oh, does it look good? Maybe it's just the color that I'm not liking. So I can come and change the color. And only once I was actually fully committed to a particular style did I actually come back and clean these layers up
Yeah.
and commit to them right at the end. I got into a mistake early on about, making this really neat at the start, and it's just such a time waster just to have to keep removing them, right? So just quick and dirty at the start until you get like your creative juices flowing, and then just keep all of your iterations that you're working with, and you can choose at the end what you want and what you don't like.
Yeah,
Hope
cool.
that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it does. And I think, yeah, there was just a couple of people, I guess, going back to the insulation material
Mm,
with the displacement. Yeah, I think Dan, I think, as texture artists, Chrissy, we know how important UVs are. And if when you're setting them up at the start, you have to get them right. You've got Udoms here, so there's probably some people online that are coming from games and stuff. In
Yeah.
terms of masking out the UDMs, do you want to just sort of maybe talk about how you
Hmm.
mask out the different UDMs and different sections and stuff?
Yeah, for sure. So when I UV'd this bag, um, I tried to keep different materials or different sections on different UDIMs. And there's a good reason for that, is that in Substance, it is actually it's really important that you optimize your scene as much as possible. But you also need, you need the amount of UDIMs to be able to produce a high amount of like quality in your textures. So the reason why I might like why you want UDIMs as opposed to just a single one is for something like this where we're rendering it quite close. It's not real time. We want to be able to have that, 2K resolution, 4K resolution on multiple different UDIMs. If I had have taken all of these UVs down and squished them onto one UDIM, you would find that you just wouldn't be able to get the level of detail that you want for something like this. If you want fabric like stitches, and if you want some of these things to be able to resolve themselves up close, you need the resolution to be able to do that. So that's why we've made that choice to have multiple UDIMs. And the other reason is Substance really supports multiple UDIMs really well. And, all texturing packages do because it's a quite common practice in 3D to use multiple UDIMs. Whenever you create a new material, you have two different ways that you can produce a mask. And I'll just show you those two ways. I'm now just creating a new fill layer. And I've shown you before that you can add a mask like this, right? So that's the easiest way of generating a mask. But the other way you can generate a mask is actually through this little box here. And this is what I used a lot of the time. You can see all these numbers here. So what you can actually do is instead of hand painting your mask, you can just tick on or off which UDIMs you want that material to be on. So if I go, I want this white material to be just on the buckles, I'm just going to click on the buckles and you'll see it will tick it on and just apply it to that particular part. So there's no mask on this material, but it's got a UDIM mask. And think of that as like the overall, you've got like a couple different layers or levels of masks. This one overrides anything else. It's also fantastic for optimization. If you find that your computer's a bit slower or it's not working, I find that if you actually use UDIM masks to actually remove the material on as many different things, like just basically take it off of things that you don't need it allows it to only calculate on that one region. So this yellow fabric is actually now only being calculated on this one UDIM over here. So you can just click on it. So it's a really good way to be able to optimize your scene. But also the good thing about UDIMs is it's also just a matter of organization. I could have actually shrunk these down onto probably far less tiles, but I've chosen to keep them separate so that you've got the opportunity to come in and select these in sensible parts. Some of these parts, like this plastic that I could see on the golf bag, was traditionally a different type of material. Everything kind of makes sense, the breakdown of these UDIMs. So that's why I made that choice that I did.
And
You can see
just
the emission is all these cables are on one
yeah.
UDIM, for example.
And with the textile density of each of the is it consistent across all of the UV tiles, Chrissy?
Yeah, for the most part, I believe it is. So you can actually just test that by popping in we can just pop a checker on like this. So if we pop a checker on, I'm going to pop this on. So right click, include all. Um, so we can have a look, and then I'm just actually going to tile it down so we can see. If you guys have ever UV'd before, this is the general process. You can kind of look at textile density to see. So you can see for the most part, it's quite
Mm.
even.
Hmm.
Some of them have a little bit more textile density. The reason being is that, traditionally this is a very different fabric to this. So
Mm.
it didn't matter that this was a little bit of had a bit more detail in it, because you're going to probably put a different material on this one.
Yeah.
However, if you were looking to put the same material on everything, you might just want to switch the projection mode out to maybe triplanar instead. Now you do get some lines along the edges, but for most materials, something like this will work if the textile density is a bit off.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah.
What else was there? Another question. What if they're large mesh? Yeah. I mean, oh, I mean by continuity is visible seams. So yeah, doing the triplanar gets rid of the seams. I guess that's what you're meaning, Shady. I'm not too sure there.
Yeah, so you do actually get seams. That's always a bit of a challenge. Like you can't eliminate all of your seams because even just the nature of unwrapping things. Luckily, I was able to hide most of them.
Yeah.
So you can see like this one, like, it's got a strap on top of it, right? So the UV seam's underneath the strap.
Mm.
I was able to, for the most part, like pieces like this, you can cut them out in their entirety. So there wasn't really a need to have seams. But look, there's a seam. Did you see it in the render? No.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So,
that's the
yeah.
thing. Unless the camera's like right on it, like it's going to be hard to see. It's just yeah. Uh,
Yeah. So it's
ink.
actually, you don't need to eliminate all of your seams. I traditionally will hide what I can or use triplanar projections if the directionality is not important. Triplanar will completely eliminate seams. Otherwise, I will just spot fix them at the end if it's important and you see it right in front of the camera.
Cool. And in terms of that, going back to the insulation stuff and the displacement, did you enable the displacement inside of yeah? So you've got displacement set on there. Did you
Yes.
crank that up inside of Maya, or did you or how, just yeah maybe go through how you enabled the displacement there, just down the
Yeah, for
bottom there.
sure.
Yeah.
So all you need to do actually is you come into the shader settings
Yeah.
and scroll down to the bottom, and you have this section called displacement and tessellation. I believe by default it's actually enabled. But if you disable it, you'll see that it actually still looks like there's a bit of bump there, but it's actually a fake
Yeah.
bump. If you actually want it to displace and come out of the fabric or of the mesh, sorry, you have to enable it. And you can see that it now displaces and lights properly. What I would traditionally do is you can come over here and you can go, you need to subdivide it basically. If this was on 0, it wouldn't be able to subdivide or move properly. So you need to actually give it a lot more squares to be able to
Get a good result.
subdivide. So you need to turn that up. You'll see like if it's too low, you'll actually end up with a like jagged, maybe if I put it on uniform and switch it off, it will look jagged and it won't look right.
Mhm.
So you do just need to turn it up a bit. And then in terms of the scale, I've got my scale on quite low. It's very, very sensitive. But if you wanted this to actually displace, like, I mean, you can go nuts with it, right?
Yeah.
But you don't want to be doing that. Looks a bit funny. So I usually have it very, very low. I figure out what my biggest detail is. So in this case, my biggest detail was that foil. I will then make sure that particular material has a displacement of 1. So that's the
Hmm.
maximum amount. And then I will just tune it to get the level that I want here.
Yeah.
Now, it depends on where you're going to be rendering this from. If you're going to be rendering this in like Substance Stager or something, this should translate across quite easily to a renderer like that. Otherwise, if you're using a different kind of renderer, there's obviously a bit of a translation process to get that working. I used RenderMan for this, but I would probably suggest even Substance Stager is probably a very simple, easy, and accessible form to be able to render this as well. And it pairs very nicely with Painter.
Yeah. Shady just said, because if you have a large mesh, you'll eventually need multiple UDMs that cause seams. And I heard that in Substance Painter, it's different than other DCC apps in terms of
Mm.
tiling textures. So, for example, in Blender, if you tile a 4K texture, you'll
Hmm.
get larger resolution. But in Substance Painter, if you tile a texture, you'll still get the tile resolution texture density.
Yeah, I think there's a couple different things in that question.
Mm,
I it basically Substance works the exact same way
yeah.
as any other texturing package. What is doing would be exactly the same as what Substance is doing. Um, the texture or the amount of UDIMs you have, it's a I guess it's a texturing concept that is Yeah, it's the same for all of them. In terms of like determining what resolution you have for those textures, it's a very manual process. So right now you can see at the top, I've set it to 2K. So right now all of my UTMs have a resolution of 2K. It's got nothing to do with the tiling or the amount of repetition that you have on a particular part. If I go like add a fill layer and just add, let's add maybe not a checker, let's add like some dirt or something. Let's see, something that we can actually see the resolution. So maybe this one. So you can see here, and I'm just going to actually flip to one channel so we can see it without the lighting a bit easier. Let me now have it. I'll show you what it's doing. So this is the projection mode. This tells you how it gets projected on there. A UV projection is just this. It will put one image here, and it will just stamp it across every UV. And this is a representation of that. So you can kind of see it's actually tiling in UV space. So wherever you have an edge on your like cuts, it will obviously produce a seam because one side over here is not going to naturally tie up with this side. But that's okay. The fantastic thing about it is that it does give you a sense of directionality. So that's why you might use UV mode because you can see the direction will follow whatever you've set up. Now, if you actually, in terms of resolution and how that gets output into a texture, I can actually drop this resolution. I can put it right down on, 256, and you'll see straight away that you've actually dropped all of that resolution on the fly. So if you were to export it out at 256, this is what your image is going to look like. It's not going to look very good. But what Substance does really well, and this is actually what other packages, I'm not sure what Blender does, but it's better than other packages in this sense, is that you don't have to commit to a particular resolution at the beginning. It's basically, it can up or downscale on the fly, and you just put it as high as what your computer can handle. This is just for what you see in the viewport. So if I pop this on 1K, I'm getting a little bit more resolution. And you can see that now I can see what I'm doing a bit more. When you go to export your textures, this is where you actually choose what resolution you want on the output. And I believe in Substance Stager, you have the same options there as to what you actually render. But just keep in mind that the resolution is actually a separate thing to the tiling. These are two different concepts in texturing. So, there's a couple different concepts here that I encourage you guys just to, look up and try to understand the relationship between them. So there's resolution, tiling, and then projection mode. Have a play around with all the settings, see what they do, and it'll help you understand the best choice for your needs.
Yeah, and it's like you said before, sometimes, there's not one solution that's right. Sometimes you'll get 90% of the way there with some form of projection and you're like, oh my God, I can still
Mm,
do that. And then you have to play around with, and like you did in your layer setup, sometimes you'll have to duplicate and then change the
mm,
projection just to be able to get that other 10%. So, um,
exactly.
yeah, no, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
what other questions did I have for you? So in terms of in terms of so you can render inside a painter as well to just get out your final renders as well, Chrissy, if you wanted to, right? I know you took it across into Maya,
mm,
into Houdini or Maya
I actually took it across into Houdini.
Houdini. Nice.
So I took it across. I just exported my textures. And you know, you just have all of your various settings here. So you pick your renderer that you're planning on rendering it through, and then that will export out the textures in the format that you need it to be in. Now, this is a little bit probably more advanced and requires a bit of look dev knowledge. I don't like, I guess, the purposes of this, Alan, you can also choose more
Yeah.
user-friendly ways of rendering this. So if you have access to Substance Stager, um, I'm not going to send it across, I think, in this
Yeah.
demo, just because I haven't done this before with this asset. But what I would normally do is actually, once you've got it open, there's a little send to Stager button. Where is that one gone?
Oh,
I thought it was here.
it's on the side. It's moved now. So if you go to Window Export, Window Toolbars, I think it is. Oh no, sorry. Where is it?
No, it's
It's
normally on the side here, isn't it?
yeah, it's they changed it just recently. Where is it? Is it under Window Views? Back up the top. Window View.
Hmm.
There. Yeah.
Export.
Export there. Click that.
Oh, here we go. There we
Yeah, it's
go.
got a
So,
little
yeah.
so you can send a stager. But yeah, for
Hmm.
those people that are doing the contest, you can render straight inside a Substance Painter or whatever. So like there's again, you've got your little render icon there. We're using iRay, so
Hmm.
you can just do it quickly in there. And so David saying, what's the difference of RenderMan in comparison with Arnold? Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
we're not gonna get into rendering sort of bits of software here. I mean, there's RenderMan, which has obviously come from Pixar, and they're
Hmm.
just the computations are slightly different. But I mean, the one good thing that's happening now is they're trying to standardize everything so
Yeah.
that whatever you get out of Substance or Murray or whatever is going to look the same in RenderMan or Arnold. So
Hmm.
really, it comes down to properties and parameters with inside the render engines themselves. But for the sake of this contest, you can do your renders straight in
Yeah.
here. There is a plugin for Substance to Maya, which sets up a shading network, which is pretty handy. It just connects the shading network up for you and gets you kind of 90% of the way there. And it's the same, I think, within Houdini as well. There's a plugin for that as well, which will just help with that setup. But do you plan to show the RenderMan look dev process? No, we're not going to do the RenderMan. So Chrissy didn't use RenderMan for it. It was just yeah, she used Maya for her for her final renders. But like I said, you've got do you want to just show where that is up the top there, Chrissy? You got the iRay render up there. So next to the little, so you've got and I believe actually I think I've got the file open here. Let me just have a quick look.
I'm just nervous to press the iRay because I
Yeah,
don't know whether it's going to crush, but I guess it doesn't really matter if it crushes. But this is a very heavy project and I haven't set it up to work with iRay. But traditionally, it's pretty easy to actually you just press iRay and it just changes the viewport, and you can easily take some snaps. But I would actually even recommend Stager for that if you've got that as part of your project or as part of your package, because Stager, it's just a little bit more intuitive and you can even put backgrounds on it and you can put lighting in. The iRay in here is good as well, but you just got more options in Stager.
yeah, no, exactly. I was just going to do that and set up
To
this.
add in terms of renderer, like I won't go into it, but the main thing is just use what you're comfortable with. I'm comfortable with RenderMan. I use it every day. That's why I would use something. That's why I chose to use it. I could have just as easily set this up for a stager, or I could have set it up for a different renderer like Arnold, like you mentioned. But just stick with what you know. It's not necessarily a look dev exercise, it's a texturing creative exercise. So just use the tools that are familiar to you. There's no real benefit to using one over the other. It's just what you're comfortable and familiar with.
Yeah, exactly. Um, cool. Well, I think yeah, we've gone past the hour, Chrissy. So,
Yep.
yeah, just wanted to thank you for your time and yeah, just working us through your process. It's always interesting to hear, like how industry professional is, and it's, like what the setup is, and it's not too dissimilar to
Mm.
what everyone else is doing. I'm sure there's a few little tips and tricks in there that you've more advanced stuff, but for the most part, I think it's pretty straightforward. Just creating those masks, then using the materials to mask between. I think yeah, you've got the people got the links in there in the chat with those where some of you can pick up some of those free materials. Like Chrissy said, just start playing around. Like really don't get caught up in the detail too quickly. And yeah, I think one of the important, I made a note of it actually, one of the most important things that you said, Chrissy, was just really spending the time at the front end, like in terms of what your idea is and get building out that mood board, building out that pure ref scene where you've got a really clear vision about what you want to do. And I know I've been guilty of that before as well. I was just really itching just to start texturing something in Substance and not having a clear idea, and
Oh yeah.
it can you can be spinning your wheels for a long time if you don't have that clear vision. So yeah, we both encourage that time spent at the front end just to really nut out your idea, get some feedback, make sure you've got a real clear idea of the materials that you want to use, and then go source the materials. Sometimes, like Chrissy said, you won't find the perfect one, but you'll get something that's pretty close. And then, yeah, then you can just build on top of that. So thanks, Chrissy. Did you want to wrap by saying any more words at the end?
No, that's all good. All good. Thanks for joining, guys. I didn't realize there's quite a few of you here today, so thanks for joining and just walking, like letting me walk you through my process. Yeah, good luck, everyone. I really can't wait to see what you guys come up with. I know you guys always blow us out of the water, and you'll probably create something 10 times better than what the professionals have done. I hope you guys, hope you do. I think you will.
Yeah,
I feel like
awesome.
you guys are way more creative sometimes.
Yeah, it's almost
Can't
embarrassing,
wait.
isn't it?
I know.
Nice one.
We've got the
Uh,
fancy tips and the tricks, but you guys have the most creative brains. So I'm so excited to see what you guys come on with.
yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Chrissy.
All
Really
good.
appreciate that.
Good luck, guys.
See you
Thanks,
soon.
Alan.
Ciao, ciao.
See ya.